Welcome back to Everything All the Time. We say that because we try to get into everything, and we're not on all the time, so we kind of lie right away.
Exactly. But we don't have all the time we need to talk to some of these guests we have, because I got to give you a lot of props for bringing in some guests that I get excited that we have here.
Coach Dale Brown is our guest today. Coach, what's wrong with college basketball?
Well,
wow.
obviously, I'll tell you what's wrong. There's a couple things that I think are wrong. The first thing that I think is really totally wrong. Now, I will give the NCAA credit. I've called them, well, what they've done for years, they have a history of legislating against human dignity and practicing monumental hypocrisy. Now, they've tried to change under Mark Emmert. He's made himself visible, and I will give him credit. They've come millions of miles, but they've got light years to go, and light travels 187,000 miles a second, so they've got a long way to go. The best way I can describe them is Frank DeFord in Sports Illustrated described them as the largest legal cartel in the world. Greed. They're trying to change, but I think the most paramount example I can give you, I had a young boy dying of cancer. Testicular cancer from St. Louis, Mark Elkhorn. He had to go back to treatment to St. Louis. They took him to MD Anderson, the Mayo Clinic. He was near death, and his mother called me, and she told me that, Mark, we've asked him, what's your last wish? And he said, I'd like to see my 3 best friends on the team. So she said, Coach, I'm embarrassed to ask you this, but we put our home up for a second mortgage. We just can't pay it. Bob Costas is going to MC this, and we're going to try to raise some money. I'll bring him. So knowing that I was a maverick with the NCAA and didn't want to have them pick me as an Elmer Gantry. This is some phony preachers, and I knew they'd try to do that because I was a thorn in their side. So I called them and asked them and told them the situation. The guy Coley told me, nope, you can't do it. He said, turn the page. The book's now 450 pages. I've typed on a 3x5 card the 10 Commandments and put it in my wallet. Now, I haven't broken all of them, but I've done a pretty good job on most of them. I can't
we
follow
have, by
those.
The way.
How are you going to follow 450 pages? So I told him, well, they're going to be there. He was telling me about entertainment off campus. I said, you figure it out. So I found out there was a red-eye flight. I did this all on myself. Found a cheap motel. I don't remember what it cost, but to give you an idea of the year it was 1981. The whole trip for each individual would have been $300. So I took $300 out of my pocket, put it in an envelope, closed the blinds in my office, called each kid individually, say, you make your reservation. Here's the hotel. Here's the taxi money. We'll see you there. I felt like a pimp doing it. I felt something dirty. I should shower. Well, when I got up to speak, and I was introduced, I thought, I'm not going to hide this. I got up and I asked all 3 players to stand up, and I broke an NCAA rule. I brought them up here illegally so they could be with Mark. And I told the guy about the kid was dying. And there was no sensitivity to it at all. And so they're trying to change. I really do believe that. But the change is slow. The second thing I would do, referees need to be paid more. Now, please don't have a stroke on this, but when I used to holler at them again, when I look at film, do you know 90% of the time, now grossly 10% was wrong, but 90% of the time they got the calls right. What they're paid to work. When I sat in that building with 80,000 and saw them out on the court, I thought, they're getting slave wages probably.
Right, and by the way, they're seeing the plays in real time. We always see them, in slow-mo. To catch stuff in real time like that, too. By the way, that 81, you were rewarded with a trip to the Final Four from God.
That's right.
A higher power of some kind. But the referees, people scream about them, but you say, Dale Brown, that they're 90% good, right?
90% of the time. 90%. When I looked at film, I thought, man alive, how could have I... Well, there's 2 reasons. One, you don't have a good enough angle on it. Number 2, you're emotional. And number 3, you're obviously prejudiced. Jim Valvano, Hank Nichols, who was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame as a referee, which is a great honor for him. He came up to me at the banquet the other night, the Hall of Fame banquet in Houston, and we were talking about referees, and he said, I'll tell you, he said, that Jim Valvano one time, we'll never forget what he did. he said, the game's practically over, but they're losing it. So he called me over, and I said, okay, here's some coaches again going to intimidate me. And he said, he was very aggressive, and he said, you know what's wrong with you referees? All of you are exactly alike. You don't care who wins. He turned around and walked away.
Coach,
I always thought they knew the line, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
Coach, I want to ask you a question before we have to go, and it's you coached one of the greatest legends in the history of the NBA, Shaquille O'Neal, and I just got to ask you, LSU was with you for 3 years. Was he always this bad at free throws? I mean, because as a Laker fan back in the day, you know, the hack-a-shack and I mean all the stuff. Was he always this bad? Was there? Did you sit down one day and just go, Shaquille, please, whatever you do, please, for God's sake, make free throws. You know, you're a big guy. You're going to get fouled.
Excellent question. Let me tell you about it. He was horrendous. We were practicing preseason, and we had all the baskets, 8 baskets. And coaches, managers, trainers were there charting. They just didn't report their free throws, and he was shooting terrible in the 50s. So I came up to him and I said, Shaq, this is it. I said, we're almost getting ready for the year. I'm going to get a hold of Rick Barry, bring him in, and have him shoot underhand, teach us how to shoot underhand.
Right. Because
I'd already set up something. Was that year or the next year, for Bill Walton to come in and work with him on his inside game, and then Kareem with a sky hook. So as I walk away, coach, and he came in, please don't do that. I said, well, that's a granny shot. I said, you have to shoot free throws. He said, okay, can we make a deal? I said, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. And I set an impossible standard. I think I said 80%. It was in the high 70s or 80. You shoot that the last 6 weeks of practice on free throws, you can continue to shoot him that way. He did. He met that standard. Well, now the last game of his career against Indiana in the NCAA tournament, he had 12 out of 12. I think it didn't have anything to do with him not practicing. I think it's 2 things, and he even admits this. Number one, he got so self-conscious shooting that, oh no, Shaquille's going to miss again.
Right.
The hack-a-shack, getting coaches, and secondly, he'd broken his wrist as a child and couldn't bend it back properly. And the next thing, his hand was so big. It's like us shooting a tennis ball to the basket. You think, well, that's easy to do. Try it. Go out there. I know that rim, 2 balls will fit through a rim almost at the same time. So I think it was a combination of things. In fact, Rick Barry came up to me at the Hall of Fame, and I said, I know what you're going to say. I wish I would have done it now, blah, blah, blah. However, he shot better in college than he did in the pros.
Oh.
In free throw line.
I think I had him on that Indiana game. I had him on the air after that game. Coach, what happened to Ben Simmons down there at LSU? I know it's not your problem. Ben Simmons, by the way, was supposed to be the greatest college player and was going to go.
This is my theory. I was going to the office one day. This is before Ben Simmons ever got here. And there's I passed a couple of gigantic billboards, one on the freeway, one near my office, and had a big picture. He's on his way. He's coming. Right. I thought it was the Messiah or something on water.
So
and they had a jersey of him. And immediately I said, wow. So I called Sports Information, the friend that, I didn't do that, public relations, or promotions did. So I called them and I said, I'm not trying to interfere in the LSU program, but who put that up? Well, we're trying to, pick up ticket sales. It's been pretty bad. I said, let me tell you what, this is a bad thing. It puts way too much pressure on Ben. Number 2, it's terrible for the team. You don't do that to a team. So I think it's a combination of things. He's just one of the nicest people, plus the fact he has limitations he has to work on. But he's got really a lot of skills, but it's a one and done also. Shaquille stayed 3 years, and really, if I was the advisor, and I heard him, they told us he was going to be a lottery pick, Shaquille probably would have waited even his senior year. He enjoyed college so much. Had it not been for the incident in the NCC tournament, I was afraid he was going to get hurt. 27 intentional fouls have been called in his career. So,
absolute sweetheart of a guy.
Wish I had the total answer, but I don't. Although, in this doom and gloom, he's still the leading freshman in all those categories this year and one of the leaders in the history of college basketball. But I think there was a lot of pressure, and they didn't really have a true center, or they didn't really have a true point guard, in my opinion.
You're right. They had a shooting guard.
Right.
Dale Brown, a master motivator. Oscar Wilde once said, no one wants to die with the music still in him. Coach has got a lot of years left in him, but he will not die with the music still in him. He will talk until his last breath, and that's going to be a long time from now. Dale Brown.
You guys are so good. Thank you. It was fun.
I love you.
That's hard to say. Interviews are fun, but
let's stay in
it had
touch
some
more.
meat, had some product to it.
Let's stay in touch more often. I love you, Coach. Have a
Lot,
great
guys.
day, okay?
Thanks,
Love you, Pat.
Thanks,
All right.
Coach. I appreciate
Bye,
it.
Court.
Bye.
There he goes, Dale Brown, who's just
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Like those guys, it's just a legend, and to hear him. I love that he's described Shaq as horrendous, as a free throw shooter. Horrendous. How would you like it if your coach comes up to you and he goes, listen, Pat, your skill horrendous. That you
I've
just
had bosses say that.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know. But
that was Dale
Unreal.
Brown, and man, you can hear the show all the time streaming, and I'd go back and listen to that. Play it for your kids. If you got a kid playing sports, play it for your kids. We're brought to you by Effortless. Coach Brown's career was effortless. He was talented, motivating, and a human being.
yeah,
Right?
a good dude.
We'll
What
be
a great
back.
guy.
Possibly a call from Danny Vegas.
Oh God. Whoop.
Yeah. We'll be back in a minute.